Richard Barrett Jr. My father is Richard Barrett Sr., Dick Barrett that you guys all know. Thank you so much for coming today to honor my father. The family truly appreciates it. Thank you to the congregation and the Western Assembly of God for all the things that you've done for my father, for hosting this service and the reception that will follow. We invite you to share some breaks of bread with us. Special thanks to John Harrisman, his favorite pastor, Kathy Kelly, who helped me put this together, Bob Laughlin, the music director, who's going to actually let me sing in a few minutes here, and for some of his very special friends that we've mentioned before, Bob and Nancy Bullock, Forrest and Beverly Matthews, Richard Martin. Your friendship to my father and support for both him and myself has just been absolutely amazing. And finally, I'd like to thank my wife, Kelly. She has been my rock and my best friend through all of this. So thank you, Kelly. I guess we've got a movie theme going here. Robert De Niro once played a character marked by the very narrow-minded and sort of binary belief that you're either in the circle or outside the circle. And a lot of people in modern society do live within, that limited type of world. But my father sort of defied those modes of thoughts by seeking, creating, and building many circles of friendship that did not exclude, but rather built upon and supported each other. Circles marked not by only deep friendships, but his personal commitment to service and support for those ideas and institutions that he held dear. His largest circle was defined by his faith in God and the many friends he found here at the Western Assembly of God. He deeply loved this church, and you truly have been an amazing part of his life. And he did really enjoy dressing up every Sunday, as you all know. I don't have his red jacket. He actually put that in the thrift store a few years back. But I did wear one of his red ties, his jacket, really everything but his shorts, because he was about a half size too small for me, and even some lapel pins. So my father dressed me today for the last time, which he always wanted to do, because that definitely jumped a generation from the clothing standpoint. He also brought me to one of his Christmas shows, and again, what you've put on in this organization is just absolutely tremendous. So I was able to see the church he's cared so much about before we arrived today. Again, great organization. He loved you all very, very much. Another circle was the John Marshall Cadet Corps and Alumni Association. This is a group representing an institution that he held dear his entire life, and where he served as president of the board for 10 years. And he was so proud of all of his achievements. And I've been going through his stuff the last few weeks, all of his paperwork and things that he had put together. And the Hollywood Cemetery Memorial that him and the team at John Marshall were able to put in place, the bronze statue of the cadet soldier in front of the John Marshall House. I actually found all the original drawings and the contract with the sculptor. It was very interesting. And he was so proud of those things he was able to do. We used to take drives all around the cities. We'd go to the East End, North Side, South Side, the West End, all through the city, downtown through the city itself, all the places where he used to live and spend time. And, we would just basically take drives visiting his past and my past as well. And one of the last drives we took, he took me to the John Marshall statue. He was especially proud of what they put together for the VMI Cadet Scholarship Fund. I actually found many of the letters from cadets that received scholarships, and I truly believe that that's a gift that's even more important and will survive longer than the memorials and the statues he's built, because young men and women getting a chance at education to serve our country. So I also had the pleasure of attending this year's John Marshall Association's annual reception and gathering. Actually, it was just a couple days after my father's passing. They invited myself, my mother, her husband, and we were able to attend in his stead. And it was a pleasure meeting all of you and just being able to share a meal with you as well. He loved that organization. He loved the music, especially the music. He would arrive there early as well, just so he could meet his friends and stay late, just listening to the last band member play for the John Marshall Cadet Band. As I said before, multiple people said, my father loved dressing for church each Sunday. his red jacket, his blue jacket, his green jacket, his pocket handkerchiefs, his lapel pins, his shiny shoes. Looking his best was absolutely a passion with my father throughout his entire life. I mean, he would just dress up just to go to Costco. And this passion definitely skipped a generation with me. I didn't follow my father in that path. Just a few weeks ago, Nancy finally got him on FaceTime. And so he FaceTimed me, and he started scolding me for not combing my hair that way. He's like, "What's wrong with your hair? What happened?" I said, "Dad, I'm just driving to the Home Depot." And he totally didn't understand that. Because he would dress up just to go to Home Depot. I go, "God, give me building supplies. I don't need to comb my hair." They don't know. He never could have done that. I mean, I could walk out without looking in the mirror. He could never pass a mirror without looking in the mirror. He never passed a mirror that he didn't like. But the one thing I've learned over time, especially with going through stuff and the conversations we had, that I think all of that, the roots of that was his passion for looking his best began with John Marshall, with the company, John Marshall. He wore the uniform. He learned to dress in that organization. His father, my dad's father, wore the uniform of a workman building roads. His father before him worked for the Chesapeake and Ohio Railroad. Before that, it was generations, hundreds of years of generations, because we've been here hundreds of years, of peanut farmers and hog farmers and just people of the land. But when he discovered the Cadet Corps, the crisp uniform, the polished shoes, the belt, the sword, the medals, the peaked cap, he truly found his passion. As he grew into adulthood, he traded that uniform, the John Marshall uniform, for others, for his baseball uniform, his football uniform. Where at Ferrum, that we mentioned earlier, he scored the first touchdown and was then awarded to a 4-year football scholarship, including graduate school. He then wore the uniform of a coach for football and for track, of a lifeguard, of a National Guardsman, an Army reservist, of an attorney, and then of an educator for Rifle County Public Schools, where he was for so many years. After and then his service of the Red Cross and the March of Dimes. And then when he retired, he wore the uniform of a golfer, of a tennis player, and finally back to church on Sunday. So he was a man who loved his circles, and he loved his uniforms and his circles. Beyond the big circles, my father also had these many smaller circles that totally enriched his life. His golf buddies, his teammates in tennis, his breakfast friends. We mentioned Chick-fil-A, there was the McDonald's group, West End Pharmacy group, the monthly Glory Days dinners where he brought the circles together. I had the pleasure of actually joining him in one of the Glory Days dinners. And it really was a wonderful event of fellowship and friendship that I does hope survived his passing. It was a circle of circles. As many of you know, golf, like tennis, became my dad's competitive passion. One story that I need to share is that he actually, and John mentioned earlier, shot his age several times before he got sick. And that's something that very few golfers ever achieve. And I was actually very, very proud of that, because I'm not a particularly good golfer. And every time I would mention it in front of his friends, he would kind of just, discard it or change the subject on me. I could not quite figure out why until very recently, because if I ever, shot my age, I would get a tattoo of it somewhere. It just wouldn't even happen. But where did this newfound modesty, which was not necessarily something that he had a lot of, where did this come from? And it wasn't until sitting with John and Kathy and planning this that I realized that everyone thought he was 5 years younger than he actually was. They thought he looked great for mid to late 70s. He was actually early mid 80s. And so, he didn't want people to know that, because he wasn't shooting in the 70s. He was shooting in the low 80s. But, and I used to think of all the time, as well as my mother, for the genes that they gave me as well. And I also hope to repeat his legacy one day. That's assuming I can still play golf well into my hundreds. So we'll see how that flows. But he was so very, very competitive throughout his entire life. Another time I remember playing golf with him, we were over at Lakeside Country Club. I dropped it right next to the pin. And I was like, finally, I'm going to beat my father in a hole in golf. Not in a game, I'm just talking a hole. I just wanted to win one hole. He's way over on the edge of the green. And with a look of concentration of a tiger wearing a red shirt on a Sunday in Augusta, he'd sunk a 40-foot putt straight up. I never got to beat him in that single one. And he was very conservative in his golf language on the course. I can't say that I was that day. And although he did take liberties with his age that we know about and dressed it up like his wardrobe, I do know he was always honest on his score sheet. My father gave me many, many gifts, as he did my son. The love of competition, and again, you know, his passion for dress and his athletic skills did pass me by, but the competition was something that I've always loved as well. And what I did get from him, for better or worse, was a sense of humor. The love of telling a corny joke, the happy contentment of being the only one to laugh at them. Well, if you can't laugh at your own joke, then who can you laugh at? And I've passed that to my daughter Megan. She's got the same way. She can tell a joke and she's the only one laughing. That brings me to my last of my dad's circles, the family circle. My siblings, my cousins, and our families. This last part of his journey has been very difficult for us. You know, watching a man who was so athletic and active and fit, got to fight so many issues simultaneously. But fight he did. You know, he took it straight to the end. I remember when I ran track in high school and middle school, he told me over and over again to never let up or break stride until you pass the tape. He would get so angry if he saw somebody let up before they got over the line. And of all of his advice, that was the best advice I think he ever gave me. And he followed it to the end, even fighting his last week to beat the cancers that afflicted him. Many of you also may not know that my dad truly had world-class speed as a sprinter when he was young. He had tryout letters for the NFL. I think it was the Bears, the Packers, and the Cowboys, I think. We got a letter from Vince Lombardi. He also got a tryout request from, I think, the Chicago Cubs in baseball. And, you know, given the economics of the day, he just didn't make much money those days in professional sports. He chose education over professional sports. But he was still fast, and he, you know, carried that fast and competitive nature to the end. You know, a few years ago, I lamented to him that actually my son had finally, this was just a few years ago, finally beat me in the 40-yard dash. You know, he looked at me with all seriousness and stated he would take both of us in the first 10 yards. And I believe it. The man was quick. You know, he sprinted to the end, telling me just in the last week of his life that he was going to beat this illness and get back on the golf course. And but then by the end of that week, he finally realized that he had finished his race, he had broken the tape, and that he could now break stride and rest. My wife and I spoke to him as I was leaving the airport to return to Richmond, half an hour before he passed. And he was sharp, he was alert, and we told him we loved him, and he told us he loved us too. And he sprinted all the way to the end of the line, and then he finally was willing to take that rest he deserved. The end of his journey was very difficult, very, very difficult. Like many of life's challenges, it was rewarding as well. And he was a man who was always moving, to his tennis matches, to meetings with organizations he supported, to church. But the time that we got to spend together in the last year and a half, through a lot of his illnesses, in the hospital and other care facilities, at his home in the end, it was time well spent where we could talk and reminisce, or not talk and just be. And I wouldn't trade that for anything at all. My dad gave me another piece of advice when I was young. He said it was just as easy to marry a rich girl as it was a poor girl. I was offended by that. That's just a terrible thing to say. I'm married for love. And he did as well. But he did follow his advice when it came to his friends. For he became a rich man with your friendship, your companionship, and your circles of love. Speaking for the family, I would like to thank everyone for the time that you spent with my father as he prepared for the circle beyond to which he is now gone. Thank you very much.